When we look at technological innovations of the past, whether it was radio, television, personal computers, computer chips, social media, e-commerce, video streaming, smartphones, and things of that nature, in the early years of those technological innovations, there tend to be a large number of competing players, but over time, the number of players consolidates. Generally end up having just a very few number of, a very small number of competitors. In some cases, even just one dominant player with maybe a few minor survivors in that industry. So the question is, in the case of blockchain technology, are we also going to see a winner-take-most type of scenario? So again, once you have an industry or technology that tends to mature, oftentimes you'll have some network effects or moats that start to emerge, which make it more difficult for smaller players or new players to enter that market. Now, this can be economies of scale, it can be liquidity, it could be switching costs, just in general, just the brand name, security of that particular technology, or just kind of developers and talent that migrate to the stronger players in the industry, which again makes it more difficult for smaller players to attract talent and compete. Now, is it possible for a smaller player or a laggard in an industry to surpass a dominant leader in that industry? Yes, of course it has happened. So if we look at some cases in the past, Microsoft surpassed IBM. Later, Apple surpassed Microsoft. Google surpassed Yahoo. Facebook surpassed MySpace. Android surpassed Nokia and BlackBerry. NVIDIA surpassed Intel, at least with AI chips. And then Netflix surpassed Blockbuster. So there are cases when you have new technology, a new business model, some new use case, or some sort of just change in the regulatory environment, things of that nature, and maybe the incumbent player in that industry is not adapting to changes in the industry quickly enough. Then yes, it is possible for a laggard or a smaller player to eventually establish a more dominant position, but quite often that is not the case. So when we look at CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko, you'll see that the largest share of the market cap is between Bitcoin BTC, and in the smart contract space, Ethereum ETH. But certainly those two dominant players are the leaders in blockchain at the moment. Capital flows, ETFs, and so forth. Solana, BNB, and Base have maybe made some inroads into Ethereum's market share, but pretty much, like I said, the majority of capital flows are flowing into Bitcoin. And so the question is there any possibility that a smaller player could, bite into or take a portion out of the market cap of those two players at some point down the road? Now, Bitcoin Cash, which again was a fork of Bitcoin BTC back in August of 2017, it obviously doesn't have the number of developers or transactions or network security or brand recognition of Bitcoin BTC. It is listed on many exchanges, so it's not totally obscure, but we're going to at least evaluate some possible scenarios or some developments on Bitcoin Cash that could give it some staying power relative to the many thousands of crypto projects that likely will fall by the wayside over the longer term, like we see in other industries. After a number of years pass, and there tends to be consolidation in those technological industries because you just cannot sustain that many thousands and thousands of competitors in a maturing industry. Now, some unique aspects or projects on Bitcoin Cash that may or may not allow us to make some inroads into some of the more established players. One would be BCHBull, which is a leveraged platform on Bitcoin Cash. But again, this isn't layer one utilizing kind of the UTXO model. But again, it's something you really wouldn't be able to replicate easily on Bitcoin or Ethereum because of the fees. Cash tokens, which allows you to create NFTs or stable coins or DEXs on Bitcoin Cash. Then you've got the CashVM virtual machine, which allows kind of Ethereum type programmability on Bitcoin Cash using the the UTXO model and the low fees of Bitcoin Cash, and then the CashScript, which is the programming language on the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. But again, this is BCH native, and then ParyonUSD, which is an over-collateralized lending platform utilizing the ParyonUSD stablecoin, but it's using Bitcoin Cash as the collateral for the loans, the USD loans on ParyonUSD. And then you've got the chip or cash improvement proposal process, which allows projects to submit proposals for the developments within the ecosystem, and then those can be evaluated by the community as to whether or not they're going to be included in future upgrades or not. So whether or not these developments and aspects are enough to make significant inroads into Bitcoin and Ethereum remains to be seen, but at least those are some unique aspects. So until next video.